Hey everyone, welcome to the Markcast here. Post USFL show be damned. We're here. Then we don't just talk XFL in here, talking USFL as well. Busy day today. Kraken in the playoff contention tomorrow against the Avs. The Mariners are back at 500. Andy Murray's Padres not doing quite as well here, but we'll get into all of that. The Sea Dragons are one game away from clinching a playoff berth. We will get into all of that. I finally can quantify what I like about the USFL and what I like about the XFL. I think I figured that out. And Andy has promised me lots of hot takes today. Andy Murray, the professor. I haven't called you that in a while here. We have the professor, Andrew Murray. We're fired up today. I already got like 12 comments here. People are checking in. How are you doing?
I know we go by Skip and Shannon, but I see more of that online right now than I do between us, honestly. And we can get it's going to be very interesting.
You mean people calling us Skip and Shannon?
No, I mean you and I call each other Skip and Shannon, but honestly, I think it's more warranted between other people online right now.
Well,
to be fair,
it's good. Andy has promised me lots of hot takes. Yeah, and I do feel like I kind of know now what I like about the XFL and what I like about the USFL. We're trying to debate here, Andy and I. Ratings will be in tomorrow. I've seen some preliminary ratings for some of the USFL. We're debating if we want to do an emergency broadcast tomorrow. Let us know in the comments if you want to see that. I still like doing this Monday morning, but if you would like to see, I think there'll be hot takes tomorrow about all that as well. Today is probably going to be a little bit more philosophical. Andy and I like to break down all the games, but I watched Mariners yesterday. I watched like 6 football games, walked the dog. Andy's got, lady friends now. It's all very exciting. So lots of things going on. But first and foremost, general thoughts. What did you make of kind of this cavalcade of 8 different alt football games this weekend?
I mean, it was overwhelming. It really was. There was so much to keep track of. I had floated the idea to our group that I was thinking, what if there was like a red zone channel, like a Scott Hansen red zone channel for all these games going on the same time simultaneously? Because we've gotten to that point. There's a lot going on. And when you see, it's just so surreal to see a USFL game and an XFL game going on at the same time and realizing that they are, in principle, they are both spring football games, but philosophically they're so different. And seeing both of them at the same time, it's like, I guess it'd be the same as like if you're watching a CFL and an NFL game back to back. If you're watching those two things together, I suppose it'd be the same sensation. I'm not sure. To be honest, I don't try that too often. So it's really interesting to see that dichotomy kind of going back and forth. And it was surreal, honestly. And trying to keep up with all of it was overwhelming because there's a lot going on.
It was exciting, though. I felt like it caused, in comment in the chat, like who I posted on Twitter, who won the weekend. And obviously the fans won. Okay, that's fine. Like the fans won, the players won. But who really won, right? Who did you like better? That's kind of what we get into on here. But I felt like you saw, Chairwoman Danny Garcia tweeting a lot. We saw The Rock tweeting a lot. Like this is WCW and WWF were never better back in the 90s when they were feuding against each other. AEW now and WWE, it's all kind of the same thing. And so, seeing like The Rock, I think it's important. Like The Rock should be watching USFL games right now. Like what do they have going on? What's happening with this? Because I would put the over-under at 1, the number of USFL games The Rock has seen before, hopefully this weekend. I would have liked to think he watched a couple.
I mean, I would hope so, considering how much he was tweeting about it and the attendance and the figures and, DC, Audi Field and the Battle Dome, all that. And as right, he should trumpet all that. But at the same time, is he just saying that and watching the TV from his gym, which, could be debatable? Like and also, he wasn't doing that all the time throughout the entire season. Occasionally you would pop in. I think he would trumpet something that was like a milestone or something that was really significant. But I think you want to continue to see that kind of involvement from week to week. Obviously, Danny's always there. She's always there. I mean, she cares very much about her Guardians, who, poor thing, just cannot get a win or put any sort of consistency together. I think she has been pretty good at trumpeting stuff. I know she's been reacting to some of your stuff as well. I know you've been finally have gotten her attention, at least even if it's just a small modicum amount. You've finally gotten it into her periphery vision.
I died. Yeah, it was the fake punt to he got the touchdown, right? The Guardians. It was the fake punt to just a long throw by the punter. And Danny tweeted out, 69 yards, whatever. And I always have my Adam Sandler from Billy Madison, 69. And I tweeted that and I said, this could get me blocked by our chairwoman. And she liked it. So I think Danny's got a good sense of humor on there. Before we get into all this, just everyone listening, while we have peak kind of viewership here at the beginning, I want to get into this. There's been a lot of discussion about the playoff scenarios next weekend. We were talking, we were all watching the game. We're watching the group chat, and ESPN, and I don't blame, friends of the show, Matt Berry and Eric McLean on here or anybody else, any of the announcers, but whoever is doing the fact checking at ESPN, the playoff scenarios were wrong, is what they said was wrong in terms of what was going to be happening here coming up on week 10 with the Battlehawks taking on the Guardians and then the Sea Dragons, the last game of the XFL regular season with the Vipers, because they said if St. Louis wins, they're in. And I said, that's absolutely not, straight up. And I said, that's absolutely not the case, that, Seattle would have the same record and all this stuff. So this is per the league. We had some confusion last night. Some of the facts and figures were wrong. If St. Louis wins and Seattle loses, St. Louis is in the playoffs. If St. Louis loses and Seattle wins, Seattle's in the playoffs. That's straight up. And then we do have some qualifying stuff down here with, if one wins or if they both win, they both lose, tiebreak scenarios. Andy, I just still see a lot of confusion online. So do you think we finally kind of have this all squared away?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it comes down to who wins and loses. But then again, look at this. I mean, it matters as well as who loses. And also when you win, how do you win? It's become that complicated. I didn't give it too much thought last week because I know our guy Mike Mitchell was starting to put out some of the scenarios, and I foolishly went into the belief and assumption that St. Louis was going to win that game on Sunday. They didn't show up, so I for one had egg on my face for that prediction. But look, I think this is it's quite convoluted. We knew it was going to be convoluted. Can you imagine if DC had lost in Seattle? I mean, just think about how chaotic that would have been if that had gone through. And DC almost losing to Arlington almost brought back in the possibility of winning the division. So it's almost could have potentially been even more murky at that point. But this is, I mean, it's just kind of fascinating to see the Seattle team just so defiantly, like, despite all the stuff, despite all the turnovers from DiNucci, and Jim Haslett wants to kill him every time he does it. And they can't seem to, punch it in when they really need to, or they just have, there's a lot of not controversy, but just kind of a lot of talking points of like, this team should be good. Well, they showed up yesterday. I mean, that's why I said last week, they should be a playoff team. Unfortunately, them and St. Louis, one of them is going to be on the outside looking in because they're both quality opponents. They're both worthy of being in the playoffs, but someone's drawing the shortest straw here because of the scenario that we have with the South Division. And obviously there being divisional playoffs. It's fascinating.
Yeah, Mike gets into all this sometimes, and I love Mike, but Mike will get down these. Well, if the Renegades win, but they win on the road and they go up by 2 points and that, and I always get a little, okay, Mike, like that's great. Like, it's hypothetical ball. I only got so much bandwidth in here. Like, I just, and God bless. But then you do get to this now where this very much is. Yeah, and I think even Max commented I had the wrong one pulled up. So this is the current one because we've had a couple of different ones floating around. But this is the one, and they've got all the different points. But should be exciting regardless. And we'll kind of move on from this. But what I like about this, and we talked a few weeks ago on the podcast about USFL last year, end of the season, some of those games we really don't care, and Stallions and doesn't matter and all that. I like having all these games have consequence here coming in, to week 10. I think that's very exciting. Anything else on the Sea Dragon St. Louis right now? We'll get into the game, but anything else on kind of this before we do general thoughts?
Well, no, that's a great point. I mean, a lot of these games are consequential still, even for the teams that are out of it. Listen, Orlando and Vegas tried their damnedest this past weekend. Not for lack of trying. They were trying to pull out all the stops to win those games. And look, I know at the end of the day, they're all professionals. They all want to win. They all want to make a living. I get that. But there were points last year with the USFL at the end of the season where it felt like we're dragging our feet a little bit with some of the matchups and maybe some of the play. And just, I think maybe some people, it seemed to me, had maybe checked out a little bit. I do not feel that way at all about any of these games. People care a lot, and it seemed to show itself on. I mean, it was a great slate of games. Really, it really was. A lot of them were fantastic. I mean, I know that last game obviously was an unexpected blowout, but it still was entertaining from the fact of like, wow, this is what the Seattle team can do. But all the other games were all very close matchups. They're all one-score games. So yeah, it's good to still have that quality even at this point in the season, and still seeing teams trying things out. Still seeing teams. I mean, that fake punt throw was amazing by the Guardians. I did not see that coming at all. That guy threw a bomb. I can't believe that a punter would even have that kind of an arm. I've never seen a downfield pass like that from a punter. I've seen like little dump offs or like, oh, the guy's wide open 10 yards. No, I mean he threw that down the field. That was legit. That was like a legit NFL throw that he made.
Well, we famously, the Seattle Seahawks, we famously have John Ryan's most famous, like, when you remember he was like throwing. Yeah, a CFL legend as well, but he had his scared face on there. I think we're all okay. So I'm just making sure we're caught up in chat. So yeah, Mark's asking, like, can someone with more bandwidth break down? It's not, because it's all points allowed. I would let the games play out. I really wouldn't all I just know is St. Louis, it's not as easy as winning in. If they win and Seattle loses, Seattle wins, St. Louis loses. Otherwise, we can get all the machinations of all this kind of stuff because there's a lot of other stuff going on. Andy, you promised hot takes. I have a couple little USFL things I want to talk about here. Thoughts coming out of the weekend?
Well, it depends which league I want to start with. There's both. I'll start with the XFL since we're still on the topic. Look. Yeah, they got to get the playoff scenario stuff right. Like ESPN, you trumpeting this project, you have to put together the playoff scenarios correctly. We need to be able to put this together. I don't think that I know we do a lot of great work here. Obviously, all our media people do a fantastic job getting all those scenarios, pieced together, trying to put it together ourselves like a little puzzle. But ESPN needs to be better about that. They have to put that back on. They have to put that in the forefront. As far as the officiating this weekend. I mean, it's fascinating. You know what I've noticed? I think teams are going to start trying to keep their challenges till the end of the games. You can't burn it in the first quarter because Dean just has his rules, his ideas, and obviously it doesn't appear that everyone's on the same page with that. Stoops was upset about a spotting in the DC game that should look like it was a good first down and it wasn't, and he was wondering why because of the chain movement. You had things like, obviously, at the end of that game, very crucially challenging that holding call, which extended the game. Obviously, huge. Just a lot of things like that. I think that's going to be a big thing that goes on moving forward for a lot of these coaches. But as far as the XFL, that's good. As far as the USFL stuff, we can get to that later. But there are still a lot of broadcast-related things with that as well. I'm not sure if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, no, I thought with the XFL, I thought so. I watched Survivor for much of my life, right? I watched all up and through season 40, and then I kind of fell off. But the thing with Survivor is you learn as you go, right? So like the Idol came out, and then people didn't know what to do with it. Okay, now we can barter with it. Like, I think I really mean this. I think we saw not the breaking, but the evolution of the challenge call this weekend. We got this big touchdown, whatever, game changing, and then you see Bob Stoops are like, we're challenging. Something's got to be wrong. Someone's had to have held here. There had to have been defense, whatever. Like, there has to have been something going on, and they go back and, like, we know with the USFL last year, offensive linemen and spring leagues and a lot of these players, there's always holding. There's always whatever. Something's always going on. And I think when you can retroactively kind of freeze the play and go, there had to have been something that happened on this play to negate that. I do think we've seen the evolution of that challenge where we got to save it right at the end. And you got someone upstairs going, yeah, call holding on. Okay, there's got to be holding on that. And Dean's going to go back and look at it. And 9 times out of 10, there's probably going to be something there.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the points that's brought up in every football game I ever watch, as far as when there comes to be a question about replay and refereeing, is a lot of the pushback on having replay or instant replay on every single little thing is, one, it slows the game down, and two, a lot of people say, well, you could slow down any frame of any play ever and call whatever the heck you want. Well, this challenges the manifestation of that, where you say, okay, I'm going to have this wild card and I'm going to play it as soon as I need it, or a trump card or something like that, right? It's something that gives you that inherent advantage, in the moment. It's kind of like, I mean, it's relevant right now in pop culture, but like, it's like Mario getting a super power up, like a fire flower or a star. It's just like, boom, got it. Okay, now we got an advantage. Like that's kind of how it feels with the challenge. Some of the coaches early in the season were trying to use it early on, and it just, or like early in the first quarter, second quarter, it just wasn't going well, and then they were lamenting that they didn't have it later in the game. So I think, yeah, we're going to start seeing these challenges be really treated as like treasure, almost like you got to use it in the exact right moment.
Well, like you said, I think anything in retrospect, you can find anything wrong in a lot of different plays on that. We're seeing a lot of comments here. Yeah, Wade Phillips was the first correct challenge on a no call offensive holding that I know of. I just, and like I said, didn't come back and win, but then I just saw, and obviously Becht isn't watching, and I don't know how that happened, but it just seems like then Becht in the next game had at least that knowledge as well. Like, well, there had to have been, and then that one he got the no call. But it felt like, I don't know, it just felt like we're seeing the evolution of that, and I think that's exciting. In terms of the USFL, we're seeing a lot of comments, kind of seeing the continuity year 2 coming in and everything. I have thoughts on USFL, XFL here. What did you make of the USFL slate this weekend, the first 4 games?
I like the slate. I mean, the first game, Memphis and Philadelphia made a lot of sense. Getting that first new home market out there, kind of presenting them for everyone to see. The first 2, the defending champions coming out on Saturday, obviously. I think the matchups made just perfect sense. And as far as the continuity goes, yeah, you could see players who were holdovers from the last year sort of come into their own and sort of form better habits than they did with the very, very limited training camp that they had last year. You can tell guys like Hayes Cookus has been in the system now, and he came out and he looked great against Memphis. He was really in tune with everybody. Chris Wallen was great. Matt Colburn looks really awesome. Colburn looked great. He looked faster than last year, I think. And so like you had some of that little bit of development there. Just more chemistry, more camaraderie. That's great. Birmingham, I think, had it at points. It was kind of hit and miss. Jamar Smith looked good at points. He got a little bit nicked up, I know. And then Alex Magoo came in. Magoo actually looked pretty good when he was running the read option and just completely baffling the Generals' run defense. So that was good. I'm disappointed New Jersey didn't look better. I feel like they should have, and they just kept turning the ball over at inopportune times, and they just could not convert on their goal-to-go situations. They were really bad in the red zone, and that's something they got to fix. But they, DeAndre Johnson, I think he's the guy going forward, but they put in Prukop, they put in Dakota Prukop, and they put in, Mike Riley's going to have that 2 QB system. Obviously, without Luis Perez there, it's like, well, how reliable is that? Because Perez was just money last year. He was like 80% completion percentage. So I don't know how reliable that is. But yeah, this overall like consistency of having more chemistry between these players, it matters. It's the same thing in NFL too. Like once you get people playing together for multiple years, you see how in line everybody is with each other and how much chemistry gets built over time. It takes years. It literally takes years for this kinds of stuff. Sometimes people click, but you got to expect it to be built over time. And that's one thing that's going for the USFL. Whether the XFL plays on that same note, I don't think that's their goal, right? Like they're just trying to export people into the NFL. Like that's their whole gimmick. Like they want development, and that's great. So in that case, then how much can you really expect, chemistry wise between players if they come back or if they're going to come back? That's, this is what I was talking about, the 2 very different philosophies of the league, 2 different products completely.
We say USFL was a tale of 2 days. Saturday looked really good. The crowd Sunday. I know we're still going to get that, and I have thoughts on that. Max says Prukop was trash. Coach sipping Jamba Juice out of his stride. The Stars were humming. No, the Ticats are always humming. The Ticats are always humming, not the Stars. The Stars not. But the Stars looked really good. I felt like, and it's so fascinating to me, and I've thought about this as it comes to attendance and ratings and gameplay, everything else. We all based, even, I think everyone, USFL last year, everyone was still basing on XFL 2020, right? TV ratings, how many people, all this stuff. Nothing's ever going to live up to that like ever again, right? Just because of the build and Vince and the comeback and the money they spent and, whether that was too much money, everything else, all that, whatever. Even now, you have XFL and USFL both basically operating on half everything, right? Half players, half coaches, half TV revenue, networks, all these kinds of things. So, it's always going to be less than whatever that was. So we're seeing this, watered down, whatever version of something going back. And I do think, and in retrospect, USFL was very harshly judged last year on, TV ratings. These are crap, right? We're seeing what XFL has now. Attendance, that's crap. We're seeing what XFL. If XFL and USFL had both played last year, we'd be saying the same thing about the XFL. But we all had this like rose-colored whatever in our head, and I do think now we're, at least I am, adjusting to what is the new level of what we should expect in these spring leagues. And it is very much less than what we saw back in 2020, if that makes sense.
I really believe that the 2020 season was the gold standard in a lot of ways. I mean, and look, I think some of the XFL play this year has actually been better than some of it in 2020. To be fair, it didn't get to be 10 weeks. They didn't get the full slate, and they didn't have all the development that we've seen up to this point. But yeah, the ratings are never going to be the same because look, you had both networks in on this. You had Fox and ESPN on one league. That's the thing. And now they've split up and they've basically marked their territory. They've said, this is our league and that's your league. Like, that's kind of how it is. That's why you're splitting resources. You're splitting eyeballs. You're splitting dedication to both products, because that's just how it is now. It's not this shared entity that everyone had. Vince McMahon's not here to like kind of bridge the gap between both. In fact, the gap is just getting wider and wider between the fans and between all the enthusiasts for both sides, or for just spring football in general. It's very splitting, right? And Fox got that idea because it worked. It worked in 2020. They saw it and they said, well, why don't we try that? But we try it on our own terms. And it makes sense. Like, it's just circumstances. I don't know if they would have done that if COVID didn't happen. I think they would have still been here. I really do believe that, because they were getting ratings. Why would you give up a 2.5, $2 million 3 spot? You wouldn't. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's sliding doors. It's a perfect world where everything survives and everything keeps together, and we still have your LA Wildcats or your New York Guardians, and your Tampa Bay Vipers, but that doesn't exist anymore. And so it's interesting that you just have these two splits here. I have a lot of thoughts on some of the attendance though, but I'll defer to you first.
I'll toss it, and then we'll get back. We'll get that. And it's always going to be an issue on here. It's always going to be an issue, and that's sorry. And normally, Andy and I do. We'll get to games here, kind of do the breakdown a little bit. But this week, there's just so much going on and philosophical. I'm really excited for the show on Friday. Mike just has come here. USFL trolls for laughing at the XFL. Debuted with 1.5 million ABC Saturday afternoon would be something. USFL debuts under a million with a primetime game on Fox after all that promotion. I've seen the preliminaries. I'm not saying they can't go up, but I have seen the preliminaries for the USFL. We'll leave it at that. Texas Pete, there's room for both leagues. I understand they hate. Yeah, I mean, so this is where I want to get into this, and then Andy has thoughts on the attendance and everything else. USFL turning on, I watched the entire Showboats game. I watched half the Generals game, and then I watched most of the Gamblers game yesterday. So I probably watched 70% of the USFL games this weekend in completion, and then I caught up on the McLeod highlights. It is like putting on an old pair of jeans. Fox, I think their broadcast is unmatched. I think it's stupendous. I think they have learned we're not going to show the crowd as much. The broadcast is great. It's shot great, produced, the talent. You got Kurt, you got Joel. All like it is, we got the music. We have, the NFL, everything. It feels so familiar. And I think if you put on that Showboats game and, if you didn't know it was a Saturday in April and you thought it was a Saturday in October, like, I mean, yeah, crowd, but like, it just feels, what it is, right? But it's no personality. There's no personality. It's safe. This is what we have. It is football on the field. You like football on the field. The XFL, I don't always like the personality that they have right now, right? I think the XFL portrays itself as far too serious. It's far too serious of what it's so removed from, it was the Extreme League back in 01. Then it was like kind of the really fun, like we want the fans involved in everything. Now, like we kind of want that, but we're also like, we're really serious. Like we're really really professional. I don't always like that personality, but at least the XFL has that. And so whether you like that or not, that's kind of how I see the differences. I see, Fox, it's so clean. It's so polished. Like, this is what we're doing. We don't involve anyone. We don't need anyone but Fox, where the XFL is very much just a more, we're kind of feeling our way out here. We're evolving with the challenges. We're figuring out the rules. ESPN's not right all the time. Like, we're trying to work through it. Any thoughts on that, Andy?
No, I agree. And honestly, the quality kind of varies from broadcast to broadcast on ESPN because some crews seem to understand how to utilize the audio feature as far as getting the coaches talking and getting what kind of feed they need while the broadcasters are talking, and some are not as good at it.
Fox
Also,
is way better. Yeah, the Fox broadcast, you could hear it. We're still getting it's like a Zoom call. We're still getting the overlapping on Fox where we're kind of hearing parts of the calls and we're hearing all that stuff.
Yeah, they mix a little bit better there. And also, look, there's certain experience in ESPN or experiments, that haven't really worked. Like sometimes, talking to a fan, great, awesome. Getting destroying to talk for an entire quarter, I don't really need that. Like, I like him. I'm glad he's involved. Maybe doing the sideline interviews is cool. Like when he talked to, I think it was Darius Slay. I think it was earlier this year at the Houston game. Cool. Yeah. I like that. That's good. But his constant involvement in one quarter and trying to do play-by-play breakdown, I don't think that was really much of a success. So I know they're trying to feel things out. They're trying to experiment. And that's the thing. It's still very, very much feels like a petri dish with them. It does not feel that way with USFL. It's like they kind of knew what they were doing from the beginning, even last year. And they had a plan and a structure in place. Whether you like it or not is up to you. But like, that's kind of how it is. ESPN, they're still sort of like picking and choosing and trying to figure it out as far as like what they're going to do going forward. And so you're going to have some hit and miss moments. You really are. And I felt that way too. Where the times where I'm like, really, do we really need to be hearing this? Or do we need to be talking about this specific thing at this moment? Like I've had that reaction a couple of times.
I don't know if we talked, I know I tweeted about it. I don't know if we talked about the destroying of it all of like, I understand he has 5 million subscribers. Find me someone that has 5 million subscribers talking about your XFL league, and then we can have a conversation here. Like, I hate this. WWE did it for years, and it's such a like, we're a niche thing, and we're going to bring in like Good Morning Football did it this year. Like, they gave one of their trophies to one of the NBA commentators because like, oh, we can get a little bit of rub. Like, I hate that. I understand wanting to broaden whatever. I don't think one single person watched that show and said, I want to, I know destroying, I'm going to watch any of this stuff. Like, I get he's an ambassador for the game and all of that, but that's another like XFL thing. Like, USFL is interviewing Doug Peterson on the sidelines because his son is in the game. XFL is like, please destroy and like, please talk about this on your YouTube channel. We would really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's catering and they're trying to get other people involved. They're trying to get as many different kinds of people involved. And I get that. You want to grow your audience, expand it. And I complimented them on having him earlier in the year with the sideline interviews. But when it comes to the professional product, like I know I've made light of the CFL for not getting other, the younger demographic involved sometimes, but at least I can tell like there's a very professional attitude when it comes to their presentation of their product, which you need to have. You need to be able to balance both, there has to be some sort of level of professionalism, but also have fun. And it's kind of trying to balance that out is really hard. It's really hard to get both of those.
I just had a comment here, and I know you have attendance stuff, and then we will talk about games. Max says, at least Destroying actually made content with the XFL. And that's fine. This was funny. USFL felt like a church on Sunday, where XFL felt like a party. That was the thing. I thought the USFL very much won Saturday, if you want to call it that, right? The games were good for the XFL, and I'm looking on here. The Vegas Houston game, not as consequential, right, as some of these. And obviously we had the Orlando, the Brahmas game, but you had the kickoff, you had all that stuff. Sunday having both empty crowds for USFL with the party that was DC, and then St. Louis and them throwing the pissy party over losing at home, which I really did enjoy. You could. When Ben DiNucci threw that touchdown to Ja'Cory Pearson, you could hear a pin drop in that Battle Dome. And I tweeted out like, pretty damn quiet in here right now. What are your thoughts on attendance, Andy? And then we'll kind of shoot through some of these games.
Okay, so here's my thing. Listen, I've had a number of occasions people referencing on Saturday the audio of Kurt Menefee saying, oh, well, the Memphis attendance was around 30K. I'm like, that's not an accurate number. That's not an accurate number. I don't know where he's getting that number from. We have had no confirmation of that number. I haven't heard one thing about it being around 30K in any way, shape, or form from anybody and any of our channels. I don't want to hear about it being 30,000 people in that stadium. I don't know what it is because I look on the TV. There seems to be a decent amount of people. We don't have an accurate reading. I don't want that to be gospel. I just don't want this blatant lying of attendance numbers, okay? Like, the XFL has numbers. They have the attendance. Whether you like it or not, or whether you like how much people are going, whatever, if it's lackluster, you can discuss all that after the fact. But not why the USFL refuses to give these numbers out is kind of baffling, honestly. And I get, like, they understand that there's not going to be as many people at the games that don't have home teams, right? That's just the fact of the matter. But like, that's just how it is. Like, I want you to be as accommodable for each side and say, like, look, if you're going to announce those numbers officially, then announce them, or say around 30,000, then say there's around 200 people in the game too. I know you're not going to because you want to trumpet your own product, but like, it's just blatant deceiving. And I don't like that. I really don't like it. And I don't like people following it and treating it like it's gospel, because it's not. And I don't like it. And also, listen, the whole attendance thing, it does affect the product, like, there's not as much energy. There's not as much focus. There's not as much attention. Like, you say what you want about the XFL and their attendance numbers. Those people, like, show up and care. Those people are maniacs. DC fans are maniacs. St. Louis fans are maniacs. Even people in, like, the smaller stadiums, even though in San Antonio hasn't gotten as much, I still see those people having a good time. They're still caring a lot about the product. I see a lot of enthusiasm and energy in those crowds. It matters a lot, and it adds to the product. When there's 70 people in the stands in the USFL, it takes away from it a little bit. That's just how it is. Live sports is meant to be played with energy. I really don't go back and watch any, like, sports highlights from 2020, because that was a time when there were no people in the stands. And it was weird. It was really weird. And it kind of reminds me of that a little bit every time I see a game. That's just a matter of the fact.
I get tired because I saw that. I heard the 30,000. I've had it sent, and I know, like, people are going to live gospel with that forever. And it's fine. Again, I don't care if it's 20,000, if it's 20,000, like, it was still a great crowd. And I always get a lot of comments in here. I see a lot of comments and people go like, why does that matter? Why does it matter? This is why this matters, is because when I put out the poll last week, because the XFL or USFL was talking, real football and real football's coming back. And I tweeted, I was drinking at the Gorillaz concert in Las Vegas. I tweeted, when I think of real football, I think of, and when you have 34,000 impressions and almost 3,000 people with 72% of people voting for the XFL, it is because the USFL does not have fans in their stands and because they played in hubs last year. Now, they are working towards changing that. They're doing a good job. Like I said, I thought Memphis looked really good. We'll see what Detroit looks like and Canton and all that. But this is why. Like, all they care about is TV is because there's a public perception, right or wrong, that the USFL is not real football because they don't play in their home markets. And even if there's 6,000 people at Cashman Field in Las Vegas paying to watch the Vegas Vipers play, they're at least paying to watch the Vegas Vipers play there. And that is what people need to understand. I understand that Fox has a different business model, but there's still the perception behind it. And that is why that went crazy when I was like, I'll be lucky if it's 50-50. And the next thing I know, I turn on after the concert. I was like, oh my God. But that is why it's important.
Yeah. And again, it's just presentation, right? It's about presentation. Look, at the end of the day, this is an entertainment product. Now, we care very much about the football. We care about the quality of the football. We all do. But at the end of the day, it's a product that has to entertain the public. I say that about the NFL. The NFL has become less about the football. It's become more about the entertainment aspect of everything. It really has. Like, that's just how it is. They want points. They want, certain players to get certain concessions over others because they want their stars to play well and they want their stars to get all the stats. Like, that's how it is. And I think it's the same way we hear, like, the XFL, I'll be honest, like, I think they were maybe a little lenient at the end with that Renegades game with the PI call. And then obviously, like, the challenge was correct with the hold, but I mean, obviously they would love that to be a thrilling game to the end, like a thrilling finish. And then you get into the overtime aspect of it again. So, that's something that they're going to trumpet and say, look, here's our overtime rules and look how it works. This team had a chance. They were dead and gone. It looked like they were out of it. They were down by 11 points in the fourth quarter and they figured it out and they won the game. or they won, excuse me, they tied the game and they went in overtime and they lost, but like they had a chance, you know. You want to be able to have things like that happen in your game. With USFL, it's not really predicated on that as much. You know, it's still about opportunities, of course, and that's the other thing I want to say philosophically about the player roster construction. Look, as I said, and we've talked about it all season, the XFL wants to get their players out the door and into the NFL. The USFL, I feel like it's a security blanket. Like it's with players that know maybe that they need to have that job security and they have something they can come back to. If they get in the NFL, great. The timeline, the schedule, the calendar, we've talked about that a million times. It's a little harder for them to get into these camps, and be able to contribute after the USFL season ends. It was easier for them, honestly, to go into another league like, the CFL or something of that nature. But of course, they have their contracts with the USFL, so it's harder for them to transition. There's a lot going on with that, but USFL feels like there's security in that, right? Like there's an opportunity for them to just kind of be able to come back and like, hey, you didn't make it in the NFL. That's too bad, but we always welcome you back into the team. Like it really feels like that. There's why there's a decent amount of holdovers here still in the USFL that I remember from last season. Again, continuity is really important because now I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with this person. I know who this player is. I know what they do, and that's good. That's good for the league. But you have to consider that those are like the two separate things going on here. Is maybe the philosophy of what these players are considering when they go into both leagues.
Darren Workman wins the award today for the best comment. Darren, I'm going to say, Darren, if you DM me your address, I'll send you a spring league warm up practice squad jersey here. Darren gets this one. I wonder if MVT felt at home with no fans in the stands in Birmingham, like it was BMO Field in Toronto.
Wow.
Oh, Darren, that made me chuckle. Oh, man. Speaking of, and I have it here. Andy, did you have something I want to talk about McLeod?
No, well, I was going to talk about McLeod, so you go ahead.
How'd my boy McLeod do? I watched half the game. I turned it on. I saw him get rocked with the sack. I saw him throw the ball past the line of scrimmage, and then I saw Kurt Menefee make fun of him for playing with the metric system because he is Canadian, which I did not appreciate. See, this is the thing. Like, we do not hate on Canadian players. Like Kurt Menefee making fun of McLeod Bethel-Thompson for like playing with the metric system. That is NFL people making fun of the CFL. So how did McLeod do?
Yeah, those are the people the CFL people need to be going after, not us. But look, the McLeod, you know what? I will say this. He was pretty inaccurate at times. I mean, he's obviously figured out chemistry with the receivers. He got hit so many times. That offensive line's a problem. Great job by Rick Saratella and Nick Vogel last week breaking that down because they were right. This offensive line, they got to fix it. They got to find a way to get around it. Now, so, as far as like completion percentage is not great, but I will say this, and I know this seems like a very like cliche statement, but he looks like a quarterback. Like he looks very confident. He stands tall in the pocket. He throws that sucker down the field. He knows what to do with the ball in his hands. And I think a lot of that comes from his practice and all of his, fortitude to get through all of these times that he had in the CFL and all these other leagues. He looks like a seasoned veteran out there. Like I could tell immediately as he stepped on the field, like, oh, he gets it. Like he has the right tendencies, the right attitude. He has the pedigree. Like I felt it as soon as he got on the field. And, all things considered, I think he ended up playing better than he started. And, I think all that practice in the CFL really paid off because some of his downfield throws were great. That's some of the best throwing I've seen on the Breakers since they started, compared to what we saw last year with them. So for McLeod Bethel-Thompson, that's a great, honestly, like that's as good as the debuts you're going to probably ask for just based on all the mitigating factors of getting acclimated to a new team, a new system, coming back to the States, being with John DeFilippo. I think hopefully we continue to see more development going forward, but I think he ended up doing all right overall.
How did the Maulers fare here? Maulers, are famously the worst team in all of the spring football history here. How did the Maulers do?
I mean, they still can't block, and James Morgan looked lost. They were just completely shot on offense. I know they got a big punt return at one point, and they just, I don't know. It feels kind of like the same team as last year. They can't really do much on offense, and I don't know really how much involved in the game they are. I know their defense made some big plays, and they were able to get a couple. Like I said, they just went after McLeod Bethel-Thompson all game long, and he got hit so much. but so did James Morgan. So honestly, I don't know if it really matters as much for them going forward as far as like who their starter is. It may not matter at quarterback because they just feel like kind of the same team. And I feel bad because, like obviously they're trying their damnedest with Ray Horton in there as their new head coach, but I don't know. I think not having the distraction that is Kirby Wilson helps. Not having that sort of in the background the entire time. So we'll see if they can pull something together. But I don't know. Them and the Gamblers both just feel kind of the same place they were last year. A team that could improve a lot is Michigan. I think the Michigan Panthers can get a little bit better. Josh Love looked really good yesterday, but yeah, some of these other franchises that were in the basement last year kind of feel stuck in the same mold.
I had a comment here. Kyle says at least at least McLeod can measure. Just a comment. I'm just seeing a lot of Eric's kind of going crazy here in the chat. Eric's talking about bias, and you are not a football fan if you've been determined to watch a game based on how many people are in the stadium. I will tell you, many football fans that I have corresponded with over the last 2 years very much decide whether or not they enjoy a game of that. I'm glad that you don't. I know many people that don't. I also know very many people that do. So I would not say that I would not qualify anything of that. You are not. This is funny. John Christian, are you still a fan of the drone cam? Definitely noticed there was no drone cam in Memphis. And then the second we got to Birmingham, I totally forgot. I'm like, oh my God, the drone's back. I don't think they need it. I think I thought the camera work in the DC game yesterday with the back and forth, I thought that was good. I think if ESPN, I think Fox did, like I said, did well with the Memphis game. I think you can get away with the drone. I don't think we need that. And I think that the Memphis did a far better job of photographing, videographing that stadium without showing. I think the drone just shows too many empty shots. It shows too many empty seats. It's too loud. It gets in the way. Like do you have any thoughts on the drone?
It still sounds like I'm at my dentist office every time I hear that drone. It just sounds like whirring machines in the background. Yeah, it really does. That's the first thing I thought the first time I heard it, and I still think that. I think you got to save that for games when there's actual fans.
Yeah.
I really do. If they had it during Memphis, I guess it would have been okay. But like maybe have it more on the periphery on the outside so we don't hear it on the field the entire time. Maybe you don't have to have it behind the players the entire time. I do still like the camera that they have on the player helmet that when he makes a play, like I think they had that in the Birmingham game where a guy got a fumble recovery and it's just like, oh, the ball's on the ground. Like this is what like the process of him like diving for the ball. That's kind of cool. I still like that a lot. But yeah, they could do away with the drone cam. But look, here's the thing. Again, like I'm not trying to criticize the football at all. Like the football is of good enough quality. It's just I'm telling you about the overall presentation of the product. Like that's just how it is. Sometimes it's just a little strange not having the people there to cheer on and having also fake crowd noise pumped in, which still drives me nuts. For once I actually agreed with Michael Bowlesley about something because he was going after it this weekend about their fake crowd noise pumped in for 200 people in the Breakers game. And, I'm not, it's not a presentation. Like it's not something I would put in the presentation, but I get their idea of like trying to establish atmosphere, but it just feels fabricated, and that's something that I want the USFL also to be a little bit careful about their slight fabrication of certain things like, that. And also again, the around 30K attendance thing. Also a couple things that Darren Johnson's talk about, look, I didn't get on about this last week, but the guy apparently, I saw the guy get after the kickoff rules about the XFL and call them really, basically not dogging the entire kickoff, which is funny because he wasn't doing that 3 years ago when he was involved with the XFL. So for him to change tune is very interesting. I know he's trumpeting the USFL, but it seemed a little disingenuous. And I'll say this also about the kickoff. I don't like it. The USFL kickoff, it's too far back. It feels like those yards are just free. Those are free yards for everybody to play with. You can get to the 40-yard line like it's no problem. And it doesn't feel earned. You can say what you want about the XFL kickoff and the rules of it. I still feel like there's a strategy and there's an earning of those yards on the field. The USFL kickoff is too far back. 25 was fine. 25 was okay. 20 is too far back. They got to put it back up a little bit because it just feels like you said in our I think our group chat a couple of days ago, like it just feels like, I think Chris Rowland was touched until like the 40-yard line a couple of times in the Philadelphia game. Like that's really tough for a kickoff unit and kickoff coverage. And it feels like just almost getting the midfield almost every single time it happens.
Yeah, I hate the kickoff, and that was something. Again, I don't, I am, and I've said here, I am not the football expert, right? I bring on smart people to talk about all this stuff. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, it's, they want to do it, they don't, like, they don't want to do the XFL one, which is so weird because, like, we want to steal all these other rules, and it is, it's stealing, it's borrowing, whatever. Want to borrow all these other rules from the XFL. We don't want to do the kickoff because that's their thing. We can't do that. We're moving it. Yeah, I was DMing with the creator of the XFL kickoff over the weekend. I said, "Did you see that the USFL is kicking off from the 20-yard line?" And he said, "Wow, that is very interesting." I said, "Yeah, they're literally able to get to like the 35-yard line without even being touched, and then whatever else you get from that, it's fine. I mean, it creates what I think they need to say is not." We want to go from 80% to 90%, kickoff, people returning kickoffs. We want to inflate our offense. And by starting teams at almost midfield, that ensures we're going to get a lot more scoring. Like, that is why they are doing it, right? Player safety, that might be a bystander. Kickoff, return, completion, that might be a bystander. They're doing it to inflate offenses. Do you disagree?
No, I agree. They do. I mean, especially felt that way during the Michigan game. During that Michigan Houston game, it felt like everybody had a free start at midfield and just could go down the field. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough on defenses now because it's like, oh, they're giving up all these touchdowns, all these points. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, it's like starting a runner at second base.
Yeah.
Like that's tough. And I feel for the defenses and I feel for the special teams units that don't really get like that kind of practice it, because like once you get to the NFL, that's not going to be the case. First of all, there's no kick, like no one returns a kickoff anyways, which I understand. You want to see more kickoffs, great, but don't just give them yards like that. We got to still earn it. You still have to earn the field position that you get. So yeah, it doesn't feel like it makes drives, in my opinion, a little less special. Like, it's really special when a team, drives 90 yards, like going from 90 yards or 80 yards. It's really cool when a team is able to drive the length of the field. It's debilitating for another team when you're a road team. Like, seeing Seattle have those sustained drives against St. Louis in that game yesterday, and also just those big plays, is like, whoa, like that's demoralizing. And so I want to see more. I just wanted to be a little more organic in terms of like seeing longer sustained drives for some of these offenses. I get you want to have kickoffs. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But, the percentages of like, we need to have more kickoffs. I think Menifee was saying about that on the broadcast. Like last year, there's around like 80%, I think. And then this year they want to get up to 90%. It's like, okay, but also, what are the quality of the kickoffs? That's the other thing. Let's consider that as well. You want more, great. But what is it doing for the product? Again, that's my whole point in a lot of the rules changes.
Talking here about holding all that, I want to get to, because we talked a little bit about the Maulers. I do want to get to, we talked, cook us off the top and the Stars. To me, they look like the strongest team so far, right? Case, and obviously he bounced around going to the NFL. He was on the show, I guess it was a week or two before kickoff. We had him on. Thoughts, any expanded thoughts on Case, the Stars, the Showboats? I thought they looked decent in there. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, like I said, Cookis looked great. He made an excellent sideline throw for his third touchdown. I want to double check who it was. I'm not sure if it was Jordan Sewell. I have to look it up again. But just an amazing touchdown throw by him later. I think it was Devin Gray. I think that's who it was. Yeah. So he that was incredible. Like, he just looked really confident. He ran a lot. I was surprised by how much he ran, especially with that knee injury that he had last year. He clearly wanted to show that it had recovered, and he looks great. And if he can run, I mean, that adds another element to their offense now, because now you have to worry about that. And it really threw Memphis off that he was able to do both. Again, I mean, he can thrive in this offense. And a guy like Brian Scott was going to thrive in that offense last year, but he got hurt. And so now it's Cookis' turn to really take advantage of that. I really like the Stars offense. Showboats, I don't think Brady White's it, man. Like, I mean, he should have thrown more picks. That one to Channing Stribling was like a Christmas gift. Like, it almost looked like he was trying to throw it to him and not his own player. I don't think this Brady White experiment works, but Cole Kelly was fine. I mean, he's a big boy, but I don't see him really factoring in the offense. Again, where's Ryan Willis? We need to keep asking this question over and over again. Where is this guy? Because we've talked about him so much for a guy that hasn't played a snap in the XFL and has not played a snap in the USFL yet. And obviously played really well in the spring league. What's going on with him? We need to figure this out. Like, is he going to get an opportunity at some point? Because it's just bizarre considering how much we've talked about him and how much it seems like he's worthy of having an opportunity. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Michigan, like I said, Jordan Love played great. Or sorry, Josh Love, not Jordan Love. Not Green Bay Packers quarterback, but Josh Love looked really good. I hope that Carson Strong can get involved. He was 5 for 5, so hopefully he can get some more playing time. I hope his knee holds up. There's still a lot of players left to be considered. How much of these quarterbacks are going to come in and out of these games is going to be interesting. Obviously, the XFL, it varied. Like, some teams had to, and some teams chose not to at all. Like, obviously, if you're St. Louis, you're not taking AJ McCarron out of the game, right? If you're the Sea Dragons, you're not taking Ben DiNucci out. You're not taking some of these quarterbacks out. So we'll see what happens. But overall, I mean, I think it was a decent start to the slate, and I'm just curious. Like, I still think McLeod Bethel Thompson has a chance to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, just based on his pedigree and based on his knowledge of the offense and his skill set. I think he can still do it. So it might be him and Cookus maybe at the top of the heap by the end of the season.
I had a question here. Lots of comments about, the Showboats. Do we like the... I see a lot of people say the Showboats favorite branding, and then Dorothy walks in and she goes, "That is really ugly." So where do you land on that? And then I have my more serious question, because I had a question I forgot, and that was my follow-up. But I do have a more serious football question.
No, I'm fine with it. I mean, I like it just based on it's a color that doesn't really match with a lot of other teams, and I like the branding. I mean, it's sort of similar to the Fleet with like the whole maritime theme that I had with the San Diego Fleet, but I like it overall. I actually am fine with the uniforms. I thought the uniform matchup was actually pretty good with that in Philadelphia on Saturday. So I don't find it to be ugly at all. It's just a matter of can the fan base, buy into the Memphis brand again. It's been 4 decades. Let's see if they can get back into it.
Okay, yeah, 2 things. So now I have 2 follow-ups for that. So I like the fact that we are now going back, like, we can talk about the old USFL, right? Because last year we had the lawsuits and we can't talk about all that stuff. So I like that. But then it's also so weird when, like, the Showboats score, and then they go, "This is the first Showboats touchdown in 4 decades." You're like, I don't like, I like showing the stuff and like, okay, we're back here, we have history of all that, but like we're carrying over stats, or like, this is the first professional. That is the other thing. This is the first professional football that's in Memphis in like 4 decades. You're forgetting XFL 01, CFL, AAF. Like, so, we want to really embrace history. What do you make of that? And this, now we're like, I do think we're going to be like all in on history this year. Like, we couldn't do it before. We're going to be all in.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the Titans also played a game there before they actually officially moved to Nashville. So let's not forget that too. That's what I'm talking about with the USFL thing. It's just like erasing history. It's like revisionist history. I do not care for it. Like, if you don't want to like specifically talk about a certain thing, fine. That's okay. Like, the XFL doesn't talk about XFL 2001 at all. Ever. At all. And barely mentions 2020. Like, they almost don't even acknowledge that. They treat themselves as a new entity, but they're not going on and being like, "Oh, this is, the first time since this," or "This has never happened before." It's like, no, it clearly has. Like, we know it has. We're not dumb. Like, we can look it up. And that's the thing about the USFL. They really treat it like there's like no previous history of like professional football in any way, shape, or form or capacity. And I just think it's silly. Like, just don't try to blatantly erase it. That's all I ask you to do. If you say like, "Oh, this is the first Memphis Showboats touchdown in 4 decades," okay, that's fine. No problem with that. I get it. That's cute. I get it. Now you can acknowledge that history, but don't say it's the first professional like score in 4 decades, because that's not true. And you can't, it's just not, straight up.
My other question, my real football question. So you talked, we're doing the dueling quarterbacks, right? And some of it's by design, some of it's to get them play time, and it's week 1. XFL, we've seen some of the teams ride. We got DiNucci, all this stuff. XFL, they're really talking, we want these guys to get back to the NFL, but so is the USFL has really had that mantra, right? And we're champion Cavante Turpin. do you see, are they the same, better, worse of these coaches? Are we playing for competition, or are we playing for tape for these guys?
I think it's both. There's still tape, obviously. You're still getting opportunities for players who need to have them, obviously. And USFL does have a handful of guys like that. Obviously, we talked about Carson Strong, for example. He needs to get back onto the horse. But you do want to win. The XFL, that's the interesting thing. I still feel like in the XFL, they still want to win. Like, they still are very adamant about winning, despite some of the concessions about, like, okay, well, some of these guys are going to move on. Again, as I've said a billion times, Anthony Beck talked about that in the showcase in Arizona, but you clearly see that he wants to win with St. Louis. With the USFL, I presume it's the same thing. Obviously, you want them to have that same level of competitive spirit. And, I think it's just a matter of, like, how are they conducting themselves? How are they running the show? I'm sure Birmingham's proud of their championship last year, but I still think that it's just a matter of how do you treat yourself in conjunction with the other league, like, how much are you really trumpeting the players that you have and where they're going? The same thing with the CFL. The CFL, I still think, struggles with that too, where, they want to so desperately keep high-end talent, but they have to concede that they're going to go somewhere else. The Nathan Rourke thing last year obviously was really tough for BC fans, because it's like, all right, well, we want him to do really well, but we also really want to hold on to him and, like, keep him forever. But it's like, that's not going to happen. The USFL needs to, like, think about that as well. Where do they stand in terms of, like, being competitive and being successful, but also wishing the best for the players that move on somewhere else? It's a fine line, and I think every league is still kind of struggling with it a little bit. Some of these I shouldn't say lower leagues, but, like, other leagues, like, I don't see that problem in, like, fan controlled football, for example. They're like, hell yeah, our guy's doing great in another league. Awesome. It's a very different mentality. I don't feel that way with CFL, USFL, XFL. It's kind of more like, oh, they're over there now. It's not as much trumpeting about that player. So it's a lot to consider.
Yeah, non-NFL minor league American football leagues. We're not getting into the CFL here, Farhan. No, yeah, that was wild with that. That was really wild. I did see a comment. We'll get into this. I know you got to get out of here. We did have a comment. Fox does not seem to be talking as much about players wanting to go to the NFL. Like the XFL, that has been the complaint all season. Like, well, this guy did it. Like, it does seem like Fox is, we're playing this game. Come watch. I want to get any final thoughts on, we talked a little bit Birmingham Generals. I was surprised, and then we'll get to football, that there was not nearly as many people there come around, especially after hoisting we had the banner, we got the trophy and the rings. Thoughts on that, and then the game? Like I said, Generals were missing Luis Perez. Any other thoughts on this game?
Yeah, quite frankly, I was surprised there were so many tarps in the stadium. Those were not there when we went last year. And yes, we did go there, by the way. For anyone wondering, we were actually there in person, in the flesh, just reminding everybody. But I don't remember there being as many people there on Saturday as there were last year. That's fascinating, because you'd think, like, home opener, defending champions, year 2 of the league. You've got players that you remember from, coming back, both your quarterbacks, a lot of your defense, Scooby Wright, some of the receivers, like, a lot of familiarity, and yet it didn't seem like there was as many people there in the home opener this time around, which is fascinating. I don't know what's going on with that. I thought Birmingham was, like, all gun ho that they had their team back, but I don't know, man. It's interesting. But I'm sure people will tell me that there were like 40,000 people in the stands the entire year, so I'll have to just take that with a grain of salt. But I think I wonder what the enthusiasm level of these markets is. You have to consider that every single time. It's really funny considering, like, the XFL, as soon as we see one bad crowd, we're like, get them out of the team, get them out of here. We got to go to a different city. Like,
San Antonio's not working. Why are they even having the championship here?
Yeah, like a Port Mission, we're out of here. And in the USFL, it's not that case. It's just more of like, they'll show up eventually. Like, it's such a different attitude and different philosophy. And I'm just kind of surprised that there wasn't more people in Birmingham. Memphis, totally get it. You're getting those people back into the fold. And I think it was a decent crowd. I get it was one side of the stadium, but, so Orlando Guardians did that too. There's like the one side of the stadium for visual components. I get that, and it's also very round, very big rounded bowl there, the Liberty Bowl in Memphis. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm really curious to see how Michigan shows up, because I've been told that Michigan is supposed to be a really supportive, like the numbers, the social media numbers, the fans, like it's supposed to be really supported. So they'll be playing at home in week 3. Let's see how the Panthers do at home. Ken, I don't know. It's weird because they're not really in either of those markets. Not really, that's kind of what's weird with Pittsburgh and New Jersey. But we'll see. I want to see if that enthusiasm level is going to continue.
I have a comment here. I'm not even going to put it up, but they said there's about 41,000 fans in Birmingham. Protective Stadium holds for 47,000. So if you think there was only 6,000 empty seats in that stadium, I have there might have been 6,000 seats just covered in tarps in the one end zone there. Anything else on this? I don't want to hold you too long. People are excited here. Any other thoughts? Anything? It's just exciting. I mean, I don't want to like poo-poo on all of this. Like, I am excited. I liked watching the USFL. I really did. Like I said, watch the Showboats. Felt like this is back. But, I mean, this is what this show is. Like we talk football and then we kind of talk this other stuff on here. And I will tell you, we got a lot more comments today about this kind of stuff than we do about, Carson Strong, his completion percentage or whatever. Like, this is kind of what these shows are. But any other real football talk, any other non-football talk?
It's going to come down to what happens in a couple of weeks with the playoffs. And also, by the way, oh my God, there was so much going on sports wise this weekend. I mean, the ratings, that's the other thing we need to think about, the ratings. Like the NBA playoffs started, that's the other thing. You had playoff games going on, you had baseball going on. I mean, it was just a avalanche of stuff going on this past weekend. This is the thing with spring football has to consider. Like there are other fans watching other things. Football is king. I totally agree. But also, oh my God, there's so many things going on simultaneously for a lot of people. And that's just the nature of the beast as far as trying to get eyeballs. It's going to be a thing going forward still. I think the XFL is just content with where they're at as far as what ratings they've got. I don't know what the USFL standards are this year. They seem to be happy about them last year. Let's see how they feel about it this time around. If we're looking at sub 1 mil or sub 2 mil. I don't know what the number is going to be on Saturday or Sunday. We'll see, but I don't know what their standards are going into the year 2. So, the TV rating debate is going to be, it's going to go on until we die. Like it's going to be go on until the end of time.
It's going to be exciting. I'm really excited. And it was so funny. We were sitting there yesterday because we're watching the Battlehawks game and, I'm like tweeting at Matt Berry, like DMing him like, Matt, talk to him about the playoff scenarios. And I'm like, okay, I was like, when is that game next weekend? When is the Vipers Sea Dragons game? And I realized, that's like, I'll be at that game. That's the last Seattle, because we've missed so many, whatever. Kraken are playing. Sam Shady's here is in the sport in the thing. We're playing Sam's Avs, but we're playing them on Saturday and Monday. So I'll be at the game on Monday, but I'll be at the game Sunday for the XFL. I think that's exciting. I think the fact that you have, I was scared, and I was very scared when we saw this USFL stuff. And hey, we're going to be on Fox, and we're going to have all these games. I'm like, some of these games aren't even going to matter for the XFL at this point. Like, what are we going to do? We have 2 games next weekend that are really going to matter with that. I think the USFL slate is good as well. Let me pull up on here just before we get out. We got, Gamblers, Breakers, right? So we're going to be at Protective. We're going to see the Birmingham Stallions back in Birmingham. And then do we finally get the Canton games next weekend, right? So that'll be week 2. We'll get Canton, and then we get Detroit week 3. So that will be exciting on that. Wow, we just had a big shot of viewers on here. Andy, any other big hot takes when we have our plethora of 76 viewers watching right now?
Well, I was going to say about that Seattle game, that's a huge matchup on Sunday. It's the last game of the season. So it's kind of like the Sunday night football thing where like in the NFL where someone gets flexed in at the last second for it to be like the most important game and deciding a playoff spot. I mean, that literally decides a playoff spot. Like your game has become incredibly important and it's the last game of the season. And that's honestly for ESPN, that's a win. And for the XFL, it's a win because it's up until the last moment that it's really important. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Obviously Vegas is still playing a spoiler role. I said that last week. They tried against Houston, man. They really did, but they got in their own way, unfortunately. I Oh, here's a hot take for you, actually. As far as the Vegas operation goes, I'm not sure this Rod Woodson thing is working, man. Like, it's not going well. He's talking down to officials. He's constantly upset about stuff, and he's just not having a good time out there. I don't know why. We talked about it last week with Rick Saratella. Why didn't Jalen McClendon, start earlier in the year? He looks confident. He looks cool. He looks composed. Why wasn't he there earlier? Their whole operation is unfortunate because, again, they have the talent to play with anybody in the league, and they just cannot finish games for the life of them. They just cannot do it. And I don't think it's going to go well for them on Sunday. They might have a lead early in that game. It might be really frustrating in Seattle for about 3/4, but I don't trust Vegas to hold on to a lead. I really don't. And they haven't beaten the North opponent yet. You like that trash talk that they had with the Battlehawks where, Vegas said like, oh, congratulations on your first win versus the North. And St. Louis said, well, at least we have one.
I will say, I like that Ben is playing with some vibrato right now. I know that I actually lost like Battlehawks followers yesterday because I think I was just trash talking so much of that. But I was texting with our friend Haley, that helps run that runs the Dragon social media. I said, I like BD Ben. Like, I like that energy. Like, Ben is walking around right now, like, bye-bye, bye-bye. He's got his gun holsters and all that stuff. I really like that. Yeah, I don't like Rod Woodson talking down to female coaches and then continuing to kind of do all that stuff afterward. Guys, we're going to get out of here. Let us know if we want the emergency breaking news TV ratings one tomorrow. Do you think we could fill an hour with that? I mean, do you think there's enough to talk about?
Like I said, people will talk about it until they die. So I think you could if you really wanted to.
Thumbs up the video. Thumbs up the video here on the YouTube if you want us. We'll come because here's the deal. The ratings will be down. It should be down right about 7:15 a.m. tomorrow. So then we can still do 8:30, whatever I'll post, but we can still do that if people want it. Okay, yes, we have good viewership right now because we kind of ride the wave right now. We were hot at the beginning of the season, and I just want you to remember your boy Reed and Andy here every week doing this show. I sick as a dog last week and in Vegas at the Luxor doing all of that. Anything else before you get out of here?
We survived. We got through one weekend. Let's do it again next weekend. Always looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, JK or JJKKK says Murray ain't wrong. The professor ain't wrong.
About what?
Everything. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Guys, like and subscribe. Like I said, we're going to be giving away either the XFL championship tickets, which I do not think will hit by the XFL championship game, or else the USFL championship game tickets for that. If you would like that at Canton, Ohio, we will be giving away 2 of those if we hit 3,500 subscribers. I am looking into a guided tour of the Alamo as we speak. I was looking on there. I'll do a head count here, but I think we can request a private tour guide for us at the Alamo if you would like to be a part of that for the San Antonio. And I'm trying to figure out, I don't know if we're going to do a location or if we're going to do the hotel for the live show. I've been corresponding with a bunch of the restaurants. If we're just having like Mike Mitchell and stuff calling anyway, we might just do it at a hotel, but we'll kind of figure that out. But Andy will be a part of that as well as everybody else. Yes, Reels and Heels will be in the basement of the Alamo. That will be come to the live show in the basement of the Alamo. I thank you guys all so much for watching today. Andy, anything else before I hit the goodbye?
I have to know exactly what's your condition's going to be on Sunday, and if we're going to have another Vegas situation the next day on Monday, I got to be mentally prepared for that. So just let me know how Sunday goes.
Yeah, you mean when we're down at San Antonio? Yeah, Andy lived through quite a wild time with me at the live show last Monday. Anyone that watched that was a fun time. Okay, I think that's it. Ox says, all right, thanks guys. All right, look for an episode tomorrow. Should be fun. We'll see you next time.